let's talk about the nitrogen cycle. The nitrogen cycle consists of beneficial bacteria, aerobic bacteria which needs oxygen, and anaerobic bacteria which needs no oxygen, very little flow, very little oxygen, no oxygen. It actually will die if oxygen is presented to it. So if it comes in contact with oxygenated water, it will actually die. So it really needs no water or no oxygen in the water, this bacteria. So aerobic bacteria, right, is the number one thing your fish tank will produce. It will grow on everything because you have water movement everywhere, it's flowing everywhere, oxygen is provided throughout the whole entire aquarium. It will pretty much grow on everything. Decorations, definitely in your filter there because it has a lot of surface area. So basically anything that provides a surface area will grow on. This is why we have filters with media in it, because media provides a huge amount of surface area for this beneficial bacteria to grow. But we're only growing technically aerobic bacteria because in our aquarium we are not providing any spots that provides very minimum flow and very little bit of, you know, air in the water, right? Because we're trying to have our fish breathe and be happy, right? So we feed the fish some food, the fish eats the food, the fish poop in the food making ammonia. The aerobic bacteria will eat the ammonia, breaking it down to nitrite with the I, right? And breaking it down to nitrate with the A, right? And that's where it stops in our aquarium. What do? It starts to build up the nitrates to a certain point. And we're like, oh wow, it's a little high, we need to do something about it. And now we do a water change, right? So we cut the nitrate by doing a water change by a huge amount. You know, we change 50% of the water, now the nitrates are back down, and within a month again we have to do this again, right? In the nitrogen cycle, it doesn't end with nitrate. Anaerobic bacteria actually eats nitrate, which turns it into nitrogen gas, which releases it on the water surface into the atmosphere, and it's gone forever. Alright, so we'll always be somewhere, we'll find a balance. But here we got this big sponge. So we got a overhang filter pushing 200 gallons per hour. Anything over like 5 gallons per hour is probably too much for this bacteria to grow, so you're really not going to grow it in a tank. So let's say you have this much aerobic bacteria, right, and then you have like this much anaerobic bacteria. You will not see any difference in your nitrates. You know, they will just gradually with time rise. Alright, because you have all this, breaking all this stuff down, which is your number one. You really want this, which every aquarium will have, doing its job, bringing it down to here, which is safe to a certain point. So on your test scale, you can have always at 0, always at 0, and this one can be up to 40 before it gets a little too much for the fish and the fish gets stressed, and then you have to do a water change to cut it. And now, you know, it's back to like, let's say 20 ppm. This is the example here, right? So that's water change. Anyway, so it just keeps on rising until you do a water change, and then you cut it, and then it's like, you know, rising, and then eventually it's up here and you cut it again, right? That's the whole purpose of this, right? The reason why we do not have enough of this, like we have aerobic, and we only have a little bit of this, is because we do not house it, because there's too much air contact within the aquarium. Another reason why we do not really house it is because we do not have the critters to really help us with this bacteria. So a lot of people will try to have very minimum substrate because they're afraid of nitrogen gas bubbles being trapped in there and eventually maybe getting disturbed by a fish, or us moving a substrate and releasing into the aquarium, and anything in its path will probably kill the fish, because it is like a pocket of poison trapped under the substrate. You know what I'm saying? It's just pure poison and it's trapped there. because we don't have no things to really move the substrate for us, nothing, no fishes, nothing really like the wild does, right? Alright. So we try to keep the bare minimum. So we're not going to grow a lot of this because we're afraid that, you know, we have these gases, pockets of poison gases, which will basically happen because there's nothing to help it relieve it naturally in small amounts and into the atmosphere like it should normally, right? So we don't really have anything to create or anything to house anaerobic bacteria to eat nitrates. So basically your normal fish tank will go up like this, and then you do a water change, right? If you could house anaerobic bacteria and house plants and everything, you might actually find a balance where it will actually balance itself out, and it will never go above, let's say, 10. We're going to put Na for nitrate with the A, because in the wild it will always be around 5-ish, maybe a little bit more, maybe a little less, because plants do require nitrate for nutrients. So we do have to find a balance. So this is your aerobic, right? A whole lot of it, breaking everything down into nitrates. Now we need a whole lot of anaerobic to break all these nitrates, because the aerobic is doing an awesome job. So we're going to need a whole lot of anaerobic. We need to make this really, really big too, to a point where it finds a balance. So this is how the nitrogen cycle, in my opinion, works. In a fish tank, it stops at nitrates because we don't really have the anaerobic bacteria. We don't really house it. We don't have ways to house it properly, and for it to really work for us beneficially, that it doesn't actually cause problems. It makes sure fish tank smells like rotten eggs, or anything in its past kill it. You know what I'm saying? With these pockets of gas airs. So we step in and we do a water change. But if we can actually house anaerobic bacteria correctly and make it work beneficially for us, then it will actually, let me get my marker here, it will actually, anaerobic bacteria, if we can house it correctly, will actually eat nitrates, eat it away, eat it, so it won't go up, you know, because it's eating it and turning it into nitrogen gas, which will put it into the atmosphere, which is now in the air somewhere. Yay, you know, it's gone. So that is a full cycle. Aerobic bacteria will eat everything that the fish poop out because it needs oxygen, it's in high flow, which will, your aquarium will have abundance of it. So much of it. Some people overdo filtration like I did. I have so much anaerobic bacteria up in here that I could make this fish tank so stuffed, and all the fish could poop in the water, and there would be no problems with ammonia or nitrite with the I. It would always be at 0. It will turn, this aerobic bacteria will turn everything into nitrate. Alright. And then the nitrogen cycle will have anaerobic bacteria in areas where there's very low oxygen content, like very deep sand beds, in places where there's no water flow, really very minimal, very little bit of oxygen, and all this good stuff, right? Right. So this will actually eat nitrates and then turns it into nitrogen gas, which will release it, right? So this is going to be 2-part of the video, but we're going to talk about filtration, on how to actually promote, in my opinion, anaerobic bacteria to actually grow for you beneficial, you know, to help you beneficially. You know, we're going to grow some beneficial bacteria, anaerobic bacteria, to help you beneficially. So it eats the nitrates, turns into nitrogen gas, actually releases it into service, so everybody's happy. So you're not doing so many water changes, maybe even finding a perfect balance where you plants and fish and everybody's working as one ecosystem, and yay. Alright, so let's talk about filtration and everything. Alright, so part 2, here we go.